What do you do when it's your time to mourn, to cry, to grieve? Grief can be a lonely road. Where does it start and where does it end? Join us on this intimate journey of discovery, healing, and transformation. This documentary will explore the many facets of grief.
The way I describe or define grief is it's just whenever it's change. When going from something that whatever you're comfortable with to something that's new and different. In fact, I use the word grief or use the process of getting through grief, not just for death, but just I also use it at work when we're changing, making big changes. I talk about people going through the same stages as if they had lost someone when they lose anything that they're comfortable with. Well, of course, I'm sitting here, my most difficult, and I won't say it's my only one, but I've suffered very few personal losses of people. But again, this one is my most personal, and the closest was my dad. I am the baby of 4 children, and absolute a daddy's baby, daddy's girl. In fact, there's 3 girls and a boy. And as I was growing up, all the things that my sisters would like to do inside and with my mom and all, I would always do just the opposite and be with my dad and my brother. So I learned how to do all kinds of different things like fix the car and work in the yard just so I could hang out with my dad. He was, just to talk about the person, he, again, was born 1930. So again, a farmer's child. He was the outside child, grew up in the country, very poor. I'm going to say very unloved and unwanted. Okay, so that was a perfect formula for someone to be a terrible father and just whatever. And he was totally the opposite. I have always said that, again, he was not perfect, but was probably as close to being a perfect dad. So just to give you an idea of the kind of things that he did. So he barely went to school, but to me was one of the smartest people in the world. He could probably barely read. But he could look at the pictures of how to put something together and could do it. And he could look at the pictures of how to build something and he could do it. When I was growing up, if we had a plumbing problem or something, he would look at it and he would fix it. So to me, that's far more intelligent than any book learning you could ever get. He was just like that. So personally, the kind of things that he did, I can remember at one point in his life, in my life, I think when I was in high school, he basically had 3 jobs. He had his own business, fixing cars in the garage. He worked for a auto parts center, and then he had a job as a janitor at the school. So most people would say, oh my God, your dad worked all the time and you never saw him. That was totally untrue. Because whenever he came home, he'd come in, he'd speak, he'd go, come out here to the garage with me, and we would spend time in the garage. One of the fun things that he would do, you know how you would have like your favorite candy or something? One of mine was like Almond Joys. Another time I had this real fetish of honey buns. And so what would happen, my dad would come home and he would bring me a box of Almond Joys. Or he would bring me a box of honey buns. And then he'd go on out to work. So again, that was just his way of showing how much he cared about you. So there was things that I was in or involved in when I was in high school, and because he was working, he would not be able to participate. But I never felt like he missed anything because he always asked about it and he always talked about it and he always did these things to make you feel like you were very special. So the other thing I would like to say about him, my dad was all of 5'7", maybe 180 pounds. And most of the grandkids called him Big Daddy. Okay, there was nothing big about this man. Physically, there's nothing physically big about him. But to them, he was the biggest, strongest person they have ever met. And that's why they called him Big Daddy. He was always just so much concerned about his family and the best times. He has said that the best times he would spend in his life was when he was with his family. We would do barbecues and picnics, and he would just sit there and actually just kind of look out, and you could just see the smile on his face when his family was around. Hopefully you can hear in my voice here the happiness bit. It's not sad, because actually the last time that I actually saw my father alive, it was Mother's Day. And we were having another one of our barbecues. My dad had heart issues along with diabetes and all kinds of other things, but primarily his heart was what basically took him. So this Mother's Day picnic or barbecue that we were having, he was basically so weak that all he could do is actually just kind of sit and watch everybody else doing what they were doing, enjoying the day. But he just had this kind of look and smile on his face. He could hardly talk, which is what he loved to do. He loved to talk, he loved to joke you, or, he just was always very engaged. But I could see in his face that day that he was like, I can't even talk, I can't participate. So I had a feeling that day that it was going to be my last day. He had been dealing with issues for years. I won't say maybe 10 or 20 years from the time I think initially, he started with diabetes, and then he had a stroke, and then later on he had the congestive heart failure, and it was just went downhill and downhill. We always had hopes that it would, he would come back stronger, he would get better. The last incident he had, there was about 3 weeks between an issue with the congestive heart failure and him actually passing. So you're right, when he had that last incident, and basically the doctor said that his heart functionality was down to about 20%. And they said then, it's like, well, we're going to give him a few weeks, and if he gets stronger, we're going to try to do some things to see if we can improve it. But of course, he passed before that 3 weeks, about the end of that 3 weeks. So you're right, when the doctor said that it was down about 20% is when I kind of felt like it was the end. I think he was at peace, but again, I still think he was a fighter. He still fought. That was on a Sunday that I saw him, and I think he actually, the end started coming around Tuesday or Wednesday of that week. And, he had gone to dialysis that day. So, yeah, I think he was still a fighter, even to the end. But it was just something about the look in his eyes and not being able to participate, especially not being able to talk, to hardly even talk. I mean, that I could just see that really was something that was pressing on him, to not be able to do that. My home where he lives is about an hour and a half from here, from where I live. And so I was at work, and we got a call, and I think my family called, because usually I had my cell phone, and they usually would call me personally, but they actually called the company and had somebody at the company come and get me and tell me. And, again, when I talked to my sister, they basically said they had to take him to the hospital, and they had to revive him a couple of times, but they were able to revive him. And for me to come, so I actually, and then went down there, but he was pretty much on life support at that point. And there was some other things that actually happened, and they put him on life support, and they kept him on life support from that Tuesday or Wednesday until the next day, until the following day. And we were going to potentially have to make the decision to take him off life support, but he actually went on his own, which was just like my dad. It's like, I don't want them to have to make that decision. I'd rather just do it myself than for them to have to decide whether to do it. And but there were some things that actually happened the day, that Tuesday, when I had gotten down there, that let me know that he was already gone. So when he actually went to 0 heartbeat, the feeling was that for me, he had already gone, that I had lost him the day before. I knew the moment that I had lost him. And in fact, that morning, I had gone back home to get some clothing and stuff to go back. And my brother had called me and said, well, are you coming back? Because we may have to make the decision to, take him off life support. And I remember telling my brother, which is, where this some of this about the grieving comes in, is that I told him then, it's like, well, I okay, if you guys decide to do that, that's fine. I don't really want to be there. And so my brother said, no, none of us want to be there, but you need to be here. And I went, okay. So in my mind, I had lost him the night before. So for me to be there when they unplugged machines, I didn't feel a need to be there because I had lost him already. If you think about the grief curve, I went immediately to acceptance, but we all know with the grief cycle, you don't stay there. But my first emotion was actually acceptance and a relief, not for myself but for him, because it was a struggle. I mean, when you're what I saw last of him, it was a struggle for him to even speak, and for him to not have to struggle like that. I love that man enough to say, I don't want to see him struggle. And so that was my immediate feeling. I did not verbalize that to anybody because I have had feelings that people would think I am crazy to really, it's like, what do you mean? It's like, you're not sad that he's gone? It's like, but he's not. It was a struggle for him to even speak. Okay? He loved to speak. He loved to talk. He loved to play with, his words with people, and he couldn't do that anymore. So I'm relieved that now in the afterlife, he can do that all he wants. I just look at it from a perspective of, what exactly are you grieving? Are you grieving for them, or are you grieving for yourself? And the way I felt was I put his feelings and what he needed above what I wanted. I mean, I was going to miss him, and I was going to be sad, but me missing him as compared to having to take shots and can't speak and can't, me having those feelings were just minuscule to what he had to go through. It's like, I'm going to miss you versus all that, box of pills and hospitals all the time. And I'll shoulder that. I will shoulder that you don't have to do that anymore. And I think that's a kind of unique way to look at it. Most people really are grieving for themselves. I feel like they're grieving more for themselves and what they lose than what. And it just may have been the situation that he was in because it was illness and because of, that I can say that. But in that case, like I said, what I was going to endure was far, far, far minuscule to what he had to endure every day being here. On the times that we've gone maybe it was the first couple of holidays after he passed. The first couple, I wouldn't even go. It's like, well, I'm not. It's Christmas. Can we go down to the cemetery? It's like, no, I'm really don't have the time to do that. But but after a while, it's like I would actually go with like my mom or my sisters, and I would be there at the cemetery, and I'm looking around, and they're bawling, and I'm going, I don't feel anything. This is not him. This is not him. This is something we've erected, just for us to have a place to come and remember him. I don't need that place to remember him. I remember him every moment of my day. I don't need a special shrine to do that. He's just there in my life every day. But as far as feeling his presence when I'm at the cemetery, I don't feel that. And the other thing too, for me personally, the cemetery reminds me more of the funeral and the body and all of that. And again, that was not him.
He was more than his body.
He was more than that. That's not what I remember about my dad. That's not what when I think about him. In fact, as I was going through pictures, there is a picture where it's obvious from the one that I just showed you and another one that he was his health was failing. And today when I looked at that picture, I went, I don't remember him looking like that. Because I don't, that's not how I remember him. I remember the person and those almond joys and that, that checking on me and hanging out with him in the garage. So to kind of talk about going back to the cemetery, so after maybe the first or second time I did that, I felt weird that what is wrong with me that I'm not connecting with this space, or I don't feel sorrow when I'm in that space. Why am I not feeling and acting like my sisters or my mom or, my nieces? Why am I different? And so I had a discussion. I finally had a discussion with someone, and they said, well, you have to grieve in the way that you grieve. If you don't relate to that, you don't relate to that. And it was like giving me permission. And I agreed. I said, it's like any other emotion. Each person must feel and act and do, their emotion, their journey, their road, their thoughts, their feelings. And if that's not yours, it's okay for it not to be yours. It's okay for you not to act and feel the way other people do. So I've not had other people do that, make me feel that way. I felt that way myself. So I almost felt that way myself. I needed to act like everyone else. And finally had to give myself permission to that it was okay. And I think most people actually do the opposite. Sometimes they will say if someone's journey is long, in fact, we have friends that, 20 years, lost a parent 20 years ago, and then on that parent's birthday, they, almost a depression, or, a holiday, they're in a depression. So, someone might tell them, it's like, it's been 20 years, get over it. No, if my journey is 20 years, my journey is 20 years. If my journey is 2 days, my journey is 2 days. It is your journey, whatever it is, and however you want to deal with those emotions, to get you through the day, is okay, and especially if it's done in a way that that you're not lost in the grief, that you are constantly moving forward through it. And if it's just I'll call it your personal portfolio, your own bag. If my own emotional bag has a little piece of grief in it that I carry with me from now to the rest of my life, then that's my bag. Okay, whatever, if it's a small piece, if it's a big piece. But you want to continue moving through life, is what I would say. Continue to move through life with whatever's in your bag. What would I want them to know most? I would say you would have to know him. You would have had to have experienced him and to see that man, the way, again, someone that actually I can say this, that how someone that was so humble, that was so, should have been so insignificant in this world, had such influence. And this is a little story I like. I would see, let me see if I can get to the picture, but I guess we'll get to photos. But I was at work one day, and this was back when we really just started having the World Wide Web and searching the web. And I was talking to someone that we're talking about, recreational activity, going fishing or whatever. And that's something my parents loved to do. My dad loved to take my mom fishing. So I said, well, this is a place that my parents go sometime. And I searched the web and pulled up this picture of this place where they like to go. And I looked, and on the website was this little tiny picture. And it's actually the picture I showed you was my first favorite. This picture is my second favorite picture of my dad. And it's a little clip that I got off of the website, little tiny picture of him standing on the bridge, just on this bridge fishing. And it's totally insignificant, probably to anybody else, but it really captured him physically, like the way he would stand and his watch, and he would wear his watch. But why that was so important to me, because this is a little man who barely could read, had a third grade education, could barely read, but raised his family and loved his family. And I did a random search on the World Wide Web and found a picture of my dad. And so, to me, that showed how significant he really was in this world. For me to do a random search of everything in the world and find a little picture of my dad. Oh my goodness, what would I say to him? How'd you get here before I did? Because we would joke and we would play, we would do something like that. And I don't know, I would just, I know most people would say you would want to say to him that I love you, but that's, to me, is just so trivial way of expressing it, that I just felt like we had a way of looking at each other, or how we stood with each other, or again, I have a few pictures, and you can just see whenever I'm beside him, like the light in my eyes or whatever, because he would know it. I don't have to say I love you, even though we did all the time. That was not the way we expressed that we were in love, that I loved you. So that's what I would do, is do something that I know that he would know that it meant that I loved him. What would he say to me? I don't think he would say very much. I don't think he would say, he would make some joke, like some joke of some sort,
So
but I would see, we would make jokes at each other, but I could see it in his eyes and his smile that he would be so happy to see me. It might even be something like, did you bring me my chocolate cake? Because again, as a diabetic, he wasn't supposed to have any, and but we would always monitor what he would have and give him a slice. That was his favorite thing, to have chocolate cake. So he would say something like that, but that would be because that's a very personal thing between us that is not what everybody else would say or what everybody else would do. But I would know what it meant, and he would know what it meant.
And it sounds like that on the bridge you wouldn't be having a lot of sadness, but there'd be almost a celebration.
Oh, it would be, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
A celebration once again of a life well lived.
Yes.
Sandra, I want to thank you again for sharing your grief journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. Once again, thanks, and you have a wonderful day, and God bless you.
Thank you. Same to you.